Hello there, future beetle keepers and bone cleaners. It's me, the articulate reptile, here with a three-part series on Dermestid beetles and their care, which I am going to call Dermestids 101. I use Dermestids in my work, and I love their efficiency and thoroughness in cleaning animal carcasses. Like I mentioned previously, I will be making 3 videos on this topic. This first video will go over some basic biology of the beetles and the setup and materials you need. The second part of the series will talk about where to get your beetles and how to care for them. And the third and final video will give you some tips on how to acquire and prepare food for the beetles, cleaning the cage, and some troubleshooting tips. As always, this is advice that I've acquired through my own research and caring for a large colony of beetles over the last several years. There are many factors that affect the subjects I am going to talk about, so I would suggest that you do some additional research of your own to prepare before starting your own colony. There are some helpful links to FAQs in the description below. Let's start with the basics then. Dermestid beetles are beetles in the family Dermestidae. They have many nicknames, including flesh-eating beetles, carpet beetles, skin beetles, larder beetles, and hide beetles. And although these names are often used interchangeably for several species, they sometimes refer to a specific group of species within the Dermestid genus. Most of the Dermestid species are scavengers and eat a wide variety of plant and animal materials. It is because of this tendency to eat organic materials that many of the species are considered pests and can cause major damage to food stores and textiles. Certain species excel in eating animal remains and are therefore used by taxidermists, museums, and universities to clean animal skeletons. Some species are even used as indicators in forensic work to determine a body's general time of death. The species most often used to clean skeletons and the focus of this video is Dermestis maculatus, also called the skin, hide, or leather beetle. The life cycle is indirect and includes egg, larval, pupal, and adult stages. Development times for these stages can vary widely depending on the temperature and the availability of food. If cared for properly, an individual beetle can live as long as 10 months. Eggs are laid in the substrate as well as on the carcass being fed on and the surfaces around it. Female beetles will lay eggs for their entire lives, and they can easily produce several hundred eggs each. These eggs hatch in 2 to 6 days into small, fuzzy larvae no bigger than 1 millimeter. These larvae begin to feed and grow larger, moving through growth stages known as instars, where they get larger and shed their exoskeleton but retain their general appearance. The number of instars averages about 7 over a period of 6 to 7 weeks, after which the larva, now as large as 15 millimeters, will burrow into the ground or other natural material and pupate in order to begin the metamorphosis. The pupal phase lasts an average of about 2 weeks, after which the adult beetles will emerge. When they first emerge, the adult beetles will have a blonde color, which will gradually darken into a reddish and then finally a black color. Before we move on, let's make sure that you can answer 3 important questions about Dermestid beetles and their care. The beetles perform and reproduce best when kept between 70 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit, or 21 to 27 degrees Celsius for all of you in the modern world. And the container kept somewhere the humidity is low enough that the substrate can dry between waterings, the ideal conditions being between 50 and 60% relative humidity. So it needs to be inside a structure where these conditions can be controlled. The containers also need to be in an area where they are inaccessible to insects and other animals that may be attracted to the beetles or the decaying material which they are feeding on. Dermestids work better in the dark, so a place where lighting can be controlled is recommended as well. I won't go into too much depth in this video, but creative rigs with airflow and climate controls can be set up with basic materials. So check the links in the description to see some cool DIY beetle setups after the video.
It's awful.
The accumulated waste of the beetles can be a little offensive to some, especially in a larger colony, and surprisingly enough, the dead things that you're going to feed to the beetles can stink while they're being eaten. I have a custom setup that prevents the smell from escaping and controls the humidity. I will have a small video going over its features and construction posted shortly after this one.
Feed me all night long.
Do not underestimate these beetles. Colonies of thousands can eat many times their weight in just a few hours, and as colonies grow, so do their appetites. The second video will address this issue and go over some stopgap foods that can sustain your colony during the scarcity of animal materials. Consider the answers to those 3 questions as you watch this video series, and as you do your own research on the topic. They will help you provide the basics for a successful Dermestid colony. To house the beetles, you'll need to have a large container made of glass, plastic, or metal. Aquariums are perfect and by far the most common container I have seen used for beetle setups. I use a 55-gallon aquarium and it works splendidly. The lid needs to be either screened or have an active ventilation system to keep the humidity down and the outside bugs from getting into the colony. The screen should be fine enough to exclude even small insects. I would recommend fine aperture fiberglass or aluminum screening. The beetles themselves will only become active enough to fly at around 82 degrees Fahrenheit or 28 degrees Celsius. But again, the screen is mostly to keep the other bugs out. The container needs to have a substrate that the beetles can hide and lay their eggs on. You want a non-compact substrate where air can circulate throughout and that can dry out fairly easily. This helps prevent mold buildup and allows the frass, also known as the poop, to fall to the bottom of the container. The most common types of substrates I've seen used are paper-based animal bedding such as shredded paper, cardboard, or bark. If you use bark, avoid cedar, as the oils in it are a natural insecticide. These materials can be found at pretty much any pet store for relatively cheap. The bedding should be around 1 to 2 inches thick on the bottom of the container, but not compressed to the point where the underlying surface will retain moisture easily. Lastly, you need to provide the developing larvae with somewhere to complete their life cycle. The most common material, and the one I use myself, is styrofoam. The final larval instar will chew their way into the material and pupate, emerging as beetles after their metamorphosis. This styrofoam will need to be replaced when it becomes riddled with the tunnels of larvae, so be sure to always have some on hand. So that's it for this video. Let me know what you thought of the video, subscribe if you like, and give me some suggestions for future videos. This has been the Articulate Reptile, and thanks for watching, guys.